I focus on multidimensional, like the multidimensional part of energy healing. And what that means is when I am working with the ancestor piece, I am seeing our ancestry connected to our past lives and how that can be impacting us. I see how the elemental realm, the natural world, is impacted to our ancestry. So if, let's say, there's a pattern and there's an issue that my father and I have, and it's a pattern that I inherited from him, if I'm not looking back to see, wait, where did this come from? Did dad just develop this in this lifetime? Did he develop it from his old lifetimes that he just passed down to me? Or did he get it from his father? Did he get it from his father's father? Is this pattern state? Where's it really coming from? If I start to track through the lineage to see how far back it goes, I'm healing myself. I'm healing my whole lineage.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Shifting Dimensions podcast, where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the transformative moments that shift our understanding of reality. I'm your host, Jumi Moses, spiritual seeker and metaphysical investigator, exploring the mysteries of existence. On the show today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Stacy Hernandez. Stacy specializes in ancestral and multidimensional energy healing, and she also serves as a facilitator at Lightbody Academy. She embodies expanded awareness to track and dissolve inherited trauma, energetic blocks, and unconscious beliefs that are held within a lineage. Through one-on-one sessions and teaching energy tracking, she supports others in reclaiming their sovereignty, awakening spiritually, and remembering the truth of who they are. Stacy, welcome to Shifting Dimensions. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yes, and like I was saying before we hit record, I've been wanting someone to come on the show to talk about all things ancestral healing because I do think it's very important because
Yes.
a lot of the things that we deal with is not always our stuff. It's the stuff
Yes.
that has been passed down our line. So I'm excited to get into all of that, but I wanted to start by talking about you and your upbringing.
Sure.
And I know that ancestral worship was something that you saw your mom do quite
Mm,
often as a child. Could
mm.
you talk about that experience, please?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So I did, and the funny thing is, it wasn't until a few years ago that I actually realized that's how I was raised. It's just funny when you just know things are just so normal in your life that you just don't even realize that it's the way it is. So I grew up watching my mother constantly communicating and connecting with her people, with her ancestors. And it was a process of just like you and I having a conversation right now. She would be like, okay, I'm going to go talk to my father right now, or I'm going to go talk to my sister right now. Oh, I'm going to have them support me on this. I'm going to see if I'm going to ask them for help in this way. And I didn't think of that as anything. I just thought that was just the way it was. And then I realized in time and all the work I do with people and how they're raised. And as I got more into the ancestor piece specifically, I realized, whoa, so many of us are not raised with really having that like connection with the ancestors as like a part of who we are, as a part of our like daily lives. So that was the connection. It wasn't anything like there was no ritual involved. There was no like candles or any ritualistic type of connection. It was, they are part of who we are. They are a part of us. Even if they've passed, they are here. And we connect and communicate with them just as if they are here with us. And that's the depth of that ancestor work, knowing that even if it's 5, 6 generations beyond the past, they are still with us. And that's how I was raised. So my perspective with the ancestors and I would say my connection to, let's say, death is that it's just a crossing, right? It's just a shift. It's maybe our connection is a little different, but it's the same in a lot of ways. And traditionally, so I'm a mix of a lot of different things. So I have European and I have certain indigenous from the US, so Lakota, Seneca. And part of what I have learned through cultural and connection and learning about, especially my Lakota side, is that our people, when they transition, they're with us always. And the star people are our ancestors. And I've learned that the trees are our ancestors. The earth is our ancestry. So my understanding as I've gotten more aware of my ancestor piece, the more and more that they teach me, I realize the ancestors are even beyond our bloodlines. And we can go into all of that later.
Oh, we
Like,
we
yeah.
are. Did I cut you off? Were you still going to say
Nope.
something else?
Nope. You're
Okay.
good.
Oh, wow, that's so interesting because I was going to ask, who are our ancestors? And also, when you say that your mom would go and say, "Oh, I want to go talk to my uncle,"
Yeah.
was this a prayer? Like, how did the conversations happen, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense?
Yeah. It very different than a prayer in a sense of I think the way a lot of like religions and ways we were raised is like the prayer is outside of ourself. We're connecting with something outside of ourself to ask for something we need or want or ask for support. Yes, like the passing of the relative. Let's say, oh, I'm going to go talk to my father right now. Yes, he there is that soul is different than her soul. But the way I was raised in believing that our people are a part of us, we are a part of them, they're a part of us. So when we're in connection, they're not outside of us. They're always with us. They're part of our team. Like I'm going to call it our spirit team. That the connection and conversation is a going within. And my mom would just go within and just start a dialogue. It's like I would watch the conversations sometimes. And it was more like, and often it was internal. Sometimes it'd be external. But it would be like, okay, I'm going to go talk to dad about this. And she would then go and just whatever the conversation was, like, I need advice, I need perspective, I need support. Show me what I need to see, I need clarity. And it's, I viewed it as such an internal process. Now, I didn't understand that. I thought these were like open dialogues because I'd watch her like say something or I would watch her kind of like internally reflecting and having, like, you could see the inner dialogue that was happening, but it was, she would tell me who she was communicating with. But it, I didn't realize it was more of what was happening of this oneness, this interconnectedness piece, because I would see grandpa passed. Now mom's talking to grandpa. I didn't understand it as like an interconnected piece until I got a lot older.
That's so interesting that you started off with usually when we think about prayer, we think about communing or talking to something outside of us. But in
Yes.
talking to our ancestors, at least the way your mom did it, it wasn't a situation where it was an external process. It was an internal process because they're with us. And some could also say they're in our blood, literally,
Yes.
because they're our ancestors. I think the other piece, which you hinted at in your response recently when you said that you used to think that it was a dialogue. Because I was going to say, she's talking to
Hmm.
your ancestors.
Yeah.
Are they responding to her? And is she getting
Mm.
responses through intuitive hits? Because you mentioned that she would go talk to ancestors if she's trying to get direction or insight
Hmm.
into something. So I just
Hmm.
want to know what that back
Oh,
and forth was like.
yeah. Yeah. So her back and forth would be, all right, I'm going to have that conversation. And she would come back later and would say, she, it was more like she would have a calm, like she knew she was taken care of. It could be a dilemma or a situation or needing some clarity. Or then later answers would come. But it was so casual that you wouldn't even know. Again, like a lot of us who are more, let's say, like healers now, we go through training, right? We go through a training to become a Reiki master. We go through a training and we go through a process. This was so much a part of. If she was talking to me, she'd be talking to her father. Like there, it was so much of a normal thing that this question is actually great because I've never really processed what is she actually doing? What's happening as a result? All I know is that she would have so clarity would come in later. I don't even know if she would know it was because of the ancestors. She just would have the answers or some clarity or the next step would come forward and calm. It's like she knew she was taken care of. She knew she was supported. So that's what came out of it for me. The other thing is that what I know I've taken from it is that the ancestors are so actively a part of who I am, my family, and the work I do. And so she she gifted that to me in how she connected, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. And it makes me want to ask too, did she learn this from a religion, right? Because I know that you said that you have a couple of different cultures that you're mixed
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, is there a particular cultural tradition or religious tradition that she's pulling from? I know that she doesn't have an altar. She didn't really
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
candles. Like you said, it was internal. She just had a
Yes.
conversation with them. But I'm curious to know, is it coming from a religious or spiritual tradition from a particular culture?
I would say that I don't know 100% no, because we are like our family is very mixed with all different things that I think she pulled from just her own understanding. I also think that my grandmother was just very intuitive and just constantly was connecting, but she never talked about the ancestors. I never saw that with my grandma. That I just think that this was her I how what I believe is this was my mother's intuitive gift. Like I think she just had an opening. It was her gift to do this and do this connection. Now, it could have been that it was passed down from the indigenous side. It makes sense. The other side would be like more German. And I know that side, I don't think was as connected, but maybe. Actually, recently my grandfather came in, her father, his parents came from Germany. They, my grandfather came in recently and said, I have to go to the Black Forest in Germany. Never been, didn't even know it really existed. So I think there may be something that they're trying to show me around the ancestor piece, but I don't know. Like I didn't ask him why. I just said, okay, can we talk about it in a couple of days when things are a little, I can really focus on it and I have to just sit and meditate with it. But yeah, I don't know for sure if it was completely passed on. It makes sense because I do see, especially on the indigenous side, like certain tradition, certain values and certain things passed down, but we were so whitewashed. Be safe, get away from the reservation, get away from the lands. Just be that. I think that if it was so mixed in, but I am seeing the history and pieces of that coming forward.
Absolutely.
Be interesting to see that. You know how some people who are like, let's say, very culturally connected, how that would present for them. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I could, like, to your point, I definitely can see it potentially coming from the indigenous side of your lineage
Yeah.
because there are many indigenous cultures that do ancestral veneration and
Hmm.
worship. That would make a lot of sense, but I was just curious to know if you knew.
Yeah.
So you said something
Hmm.
interesting earlier where you said that our ancestors are not always in our bloodline. And I have
Yes.
to ask that question. Who are
Yeah.
the ancestors? And what do you mean by they're not always in our bloodline?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So we have our bloodline ancestors, right? Our mother, our father, our father's mother, whatever, and goes back in terms of this biosuit bloodline where we connected with these parents. That is part of our ancestry. That's what we know best, right? We may know from a grandpa, a grandmother, a great grandmother. We can understand certain patterns and behaviors that we inherited from that. I focus on multidimensional, like the multidimensional part of energy healing. And what that means is when I am working with the ancestor piece, I am seeing our ancestry connected to our past lives and how that can be impacting us. I see how the elemental realm, the natural world, is impacted to our ancestry. You can have if we start tracking through, let's say, a connection to certain nature spirits, I can then start to see, wow, you were a fairy at one time, and here's a fairy lineage that's coming forward, and this was adopted. You adopted this behavior from this, and this is still carrying through with you to this day. Or let's say, and this is all like the multidimensional perspective, past lives, elemental beings, exospecies, starseed origins, where there's such a vastness of who we are beyond this 3D linear experience that we know of. And that work that you do, you can see it expands so far out. Our starseed origins, each of us have starseed origins. And if you read and connect with some of, let's say, indigenous text, ancient Egypt, you go with the Incas, with the Mayans, like in around the world, Sumeria, often in their texts, they talk about giants. They talk about beings that star beings that gifted them technology to help support them in their civilizations. And that is a part of our origin, I believe. I believe when I track into people's lineages, often I can see their ancestral star connections. So that's what I mean. That multidimensional perspective of how much we are related. Our DNA is directly connected to Pachamama, directly connected to the telluric realm, to that mineral that's sitting in the dirt. We are connected to that. We came from there. So that's where I'm saying, like, our ancestry. And when you really track into the spirit world, right? You can go on beyond the human spirit world experience and see you in your angelic form, see you in, let's say, a dragon form, see you in a, let's say, a Palladian form if you've had that connection. So we've been many things beyond just the human experience as well.
Incredibly fascinating. Before I ask a follow-up question, you said something or Pachumama. Did I?
Pachamama,
What is
yes.
that?
Mother Earth,
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah. A
What
lot of,
language does that?
it's connected more to Latin America.
Okay,
You'll hear it in a lot of Spanish cultures,
okay.
part of my ancestry as well. So not the Latin American side, the Spanish side, but that piece, Pachamama being like our mother.
Yes, everything that you're saying is extremely fascinating, but also I'm not super surprised, right? Because we have had many lives and
Yes,
we are many things at the same time.
yes,
And it makes sense the deeper we go into this idea of multiple lives, multiversal theory as well.
yes,
We are multidimensional people. So it makes sense
yes.
that we would have a multidimensional ancestral lineage. And I do want to ask, what would prompt you to get to that side of tapping into someone's multidimensional nature? But I'm actually going to put that on hold
Okay,
first because I think that's an important conversation. But I do want to go back a little bit and talk
okay.
about why do you think it's important to be aware of ancestry from a
Hmm.
spiritual lens? I
Yeah,
know it's embedded in a lot of cultural and traditions, but also
yes.
there are a lot of culture and traditions that see it as demonic in
Mm,
terms of connecting with
true.
ancestors. Why do you think it's important to connect with our ancestors?
Yeah, I believe that our healing is we have that it's important for us to heal on many layers, right? We have a physical pain, we heal physically. We know that physical pain is connected to mental, emotional, spiritual, our energetic bodies. And that work to connect on those higher levels of existence actually heal us and get us closer to our own personal sovereignty and our full expression of who we are. So spiritually, I believe our that the spiritual part needs to be involved in our healing. And that means knowing that we are beyond just this human body and that healing happens energetically in all these different layers. So, working at the ancestral layer, I am finding there's more of a rapid healing happening for people because let's just think of it as this is the vastness, right? Spiritual healing is here. The mental healing here, meaning I'm pointing outside of myself, right? Like I'm holding my arms open far further away from myself. Then we start to clean up the emotional body, the emotions we hold, right? The mental we know impacts our health. Then we can get to that physical. It all trickles down. So, actually, a lot of my work, so I'm a chronic migraine sufferer. And I was doing the whole trying to figure it out physically on my own, right? And I even tried the neurologist thing and the Western medicine thing. Nothing was working until I really started going into the spiritual side, the energetic side of the healing. So now I do it at the different layers and I'm noticing the trickle down. The more I clean up the energetic and the spiritual, there's a mental layer that gets taken off that I don't even have to focus on because it just starts to be removed. Like I just show up differently. The more and more I do this work, I'm like, whoa, that old behavior, that old cycle I used to be in, it just went away. Now I'm showing up this new way. So that spiritual part of the ancestral healing, here's another part that's really important to it. When we are, let's say, connecting bloodline wise. Let's say we want to heal something let's say we have a relationship with our father that we want to heal. And we do it like very mentally, We have a conversation with our Father. We do a forgiveness. We connect. Yes, there's a healing that's happening there. But there's also this energetic exchange. And if that's not getting cleaned up, there's always still going to be a thread there. So when we start to do the healing on the energetic level and the spiritual level, we realize that the lineage is vast. So if, let's say there's a pattern and there's an issue that my father and I have, and it's a pattern that I inherited from him, if I'm not looking back to see, wait, where did this come from? Did dad just develop this in this lifetime? Did he develop it from his old lifetimes that he just passed down to me? Or did he get it from his father? Did he get it from his father's father? Is this pattern state? Where's it really coming from? If I start to track through the lineage to see how far back it goes, I'm healing myself. I'm healing my whole lineage. So on a spiritual level, on a soul level, they are liberated because they're not carrying in their soul's journey that baggage anymore. And we know with incarnation, the lifetimes that we've lived, often when we pass in a lifetime, we're carrying all that baggage with us to the next lifetime. And we know in this lifetime, we're working to clear that up. So we either come back even clearer or we're done with that incarnational cycle. So when we clean up ancestral and we're working through us, we're clearing our whole lineage. And you will notice a difference with your loved ones. You'll notice a difference. And I can tell you story after story of the work I'm doing and the work that I've seen people do around clearing themselves ancestrally. Then their children start to act different. Their parents start to act different. Their parents, like it's a ripple. It is a ripple when you go on the spiritual level of it.
Extremely fascinating. To add to everything that you're saying is with ancestral understanding and healing, it's if you know where your patterns come from, then
Yes.
you can fully realize and understand why you are the way you are. But what I think is also fascinating with what you're
Yes.
talking about is this idea of, okay, if I have an issue with someone in my lineage that very well could be still alive because we
Mhm.
have ancestors that are still living.
Absolutely.
I could talk to my grandmother. May
Yeah.
her soul rest in peace. She's no longer living. But let's say I have a conversation with her and I realize I got a pattern from her and
Mhm.
I forgive her and I release that. But what you're trying to explain is that there's still that energetic shadow if
Yes.
that pattern did not start from her. So it's
Correct.
important to not just heal the relationship with my grandmother in the situation, but it's important to really go back and see where this comes from and
Yeah.
release that energetic or transmute that energetic baggage that
Yeah.
continues to imprint itself on in the lineage, right? Right?
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes. Yes. And let me give you a quick example of that. A couple years ago, I was in meditation and I got a very clear answer that came through. Spirit came through very strong and said, it's time to heal with your father. And it was just so clear. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And I was fortunate that I got a download of what to do. And every day I was meant to hold forgiveness in my heart and hold love for him in my heart. And that happened for a few weeks. All I was doing was just holding that space. And energetically, what the forgiveness, I saw it as like a frequency of forgiveness, like a wave that would come in. And I'd hold that in my heart. And things I just noticed, like I just watched things leave. Now I didn't know what they were. I didn't ask. I didn't analyze. I just watched energy move out. After those couple weeks, I started thinking of my father differently. And anything that happened in the past, I didn't have a charge with. Any trauma, anything like I didn't have a charge with. All I felt was love for him. And to the point where I called and I said, you know how much I love you? I love you. And our relationship is a 180 now. And there's so much joy because he didn't have to say anything because he shows up differently than I can show up. He didn't have to say anything. It's the way I hold my energy with him. I just hold a place of love. And yeah, sometimes there can be some triggering moments, but I don't react. I don't even get triggered. I just am like, I love him for who he is and how he's showing up because I know this is who he is and this is how he can show up. And so there's just this love that came over. And then after watching that and this beauty of this relationship that's developed and like the joy he has in his life because it trickled through to him to be seen and loved by someone in a very deep, soulful way. I now see my connection to his father growing, and I ask him questions about his father now. And he doesn't have a charge around his father. Because I remember he used to say things that were like charged. You could tell he was talking about his trauma. But now it's, yeah, my dad really did care about me. He would come and hang out with me in this. I never heard stories about grandpa being around and giving my dad attention growing up. And so I'm watching it now go through. And because of my shift in my love for my father and how that changed, now my relationship with my husband's different because I cleared a masculine wound too. And now my husband feels seen more. My husband feels that he can take up space because I'm not lumping him into a masculine category of just all men I don't trust. So there's like this ripple effect that has happened throughout my lineage and even my family. And I'm now starting to watch because I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, both girls. I'm now starting to watch the interactions in their relationships, and they're attracting now loving, respectful people who adore them. So this is like all through this, I'm just watching the ripple effects by just showing up and holding space.
Wow, you really cut that energetic cord. And yeah, it's interesting again how to see how your relationship with your dad transformed, how
Hmm.
he talks about his dad has changed, and then even that healing, how it's affected your perception of the masculine in your
Hmm.
life. So fascinating. And I think this conversation is so important, right? Because part of the spiritual work that we do, at the core of it, really and truly, a lot of times it's towards healing.
Hmm.
Because I think being on this 3D plane can be very hard. And there's so
Yes.
many things that we're burdened with, right? And a
Yes.
lot of times people seek out the spiritual because they're trying to find ways to heal themselves. And I
Hmm.
kind of want to get personal with you
Yeah.
for a little bit. And I know that you said that you had a couple of different initiations in your life that kind of
Hmm.
put you on this path towards ancestral healing. And
Yeah.
you talk about addiction, abuse, and some issues with your health. I kind
Yeah.
of want to talk about why those served as initiations for
Mm.
you and why they really put ancestral understanding and healing back in your purview.
Yeah. Wow. You have beautiful questions. Very deep. Yeah. You're going very deep with the questions. Of course, with the addiction piece, that being really a part of my family all over and within my upbringing and never feeling safe and certain things happening to me, sexual assault, things like that as a kid, like things like this. For a long time, I held these happen to me energy, right? I wasn't safe. I was never protected. I had lots of stories around that. And of course, I experienced these traumas and all of that. As I started to go really down that spiritual path, I could start to see the layers of how I was holding on to the stories and how that started to impact my health. It was like the weight of carrying those stories with the charge, with the energetic charge. It's like a contraction in the body. And it just was like piling it on. Again, feel these experiences then created a very toxic relationship with the masculine. My first real love was abusive to the point physical, emotional, mental, all of that. I didn't really have a child or didn't have a teenagehood. I didn't really have a college life because I was in abuse. And because of that, I had to work a lot of layers and I was doing a lot of the counseling since middle school counseling, right? Just like working all those angles. And until I really left college and started on that spiritual path and left the abuse, then I was really starting to see the bigger picture of what was happening. And I could start to get out of that victimhood. This is happening to me and into wow, on a soul level, I really chose these experiences to wake up to a newer level of myself. Now, the ancestor piece is beautiful because what that does is it expands you to understand the choices you make often are not coming from your own sovereignty. They're actually coming from the wounding of your people that has been passed down, right? If you have been passed down scarcity your whole life, that not being enough, not having enough is going to show up in all different ways. Everyone, it manifests a little differently, but boy, oh boy, do I have that in my lineage. And I've been tracking that culturally, where that comes from was certain countries or cultures my family's from. Woof, go to the indigenous side in the US, like that is a whole can of worms, right? The Irish side for my family, it's starvation. There's so much of it. And then on the Irish side, it's no male ever was sober. Like the generation all men knew was to drink because that was what they were taught. So once you get to that understanding of how these pieces, these behaviors, patterns, beliefs are passed down, then you can really start to discern what's mine, what's not. Oh, I go into avoidance. Okay, I see how my mother's family went into avoidance. Whoa, I see how my father's family goes into avoidance. What's my piece to this? Okay, I see my mother's energy within me that is still connecting to this fear that I have, and I hold on to my children like I don't want anything to happen to them. Part of that, when I discern the energy, is my own trauma from being a victim of certain things. And then also this fear that my mother passed down that was from my grandpa. And this is just through lots of years of being able to trust my intuition enough to then follow. And I also ask my ancestors, like that dialogue that I grew up with, saying, hey, grandma, can you show me like this behavior? Where is this really from? Can you show me where this is from? And I'll get a lot of hits on that as well. I hope that answers your question.
It answers it perfectly because it's a perfect segue into the other thing I wanted to ask you, which is how can someone tell that they've inherited trauma or certain behaviors? What are some
Yes.
signs that
Yes.
can clue them into this might not be fully mine?
Yes. Great question. And this is the work, right? This is really what empowers us to go deeper. So we want to be really in touch with our intuitive language, how that's expressed. I call these data sets. So you want to see what the data sets are that are being expressed to you. And those are the intuitive hits. For example, I am really tuned in with my body. I bring my awareness behind my eyes. I make sure I am not externally sourcing that I literally imagine myself pulling my energy in behind my eyes. So I'm in my body and I bring it down to my heart. So I know I'm in myself when I'm tracking energy. Because if I'm leaning outside of myself, so if I'm like pushing my energy outside of myself, which we often do because we have antennas alert to be reactive to the external environment. We're trying to stay safe. So we even have our energy outside of us, keeping us safe, on guard, always. When we bring our awareness behind our eyes, we come into our hearts, we come into our bodies, then we are in our sovereignness, let's say. We are in ourselves, and then we can start to discern energy. So, how I can discern energy is I've learned to watch the data sets that present when I set an intention. So, I may set an intention to connect with, let's say, my grandpa. Okay. He came in, he told me I have to go to Black Forest. Okay, what does that mean? So now I'm like, when I'm ready to go in and ask and figure out what the heck this means, I'm setting an intention to connect with my grandpa. But I'm setting the intention behind my eyes, in my body. I go into my heart. Because if I'm outside of myself, tuning in, I'm probably connecting to whatever frequencies are around me, other people's energies. I'm not in my own energy. So this is why things get so confusing often, because us sensitive ones, we don't know what is what often. I can tell when I get super anxious that I'm going outside of my body and I'm like connected with everyone else's energy. And I feel like I just had 5 cups of coffee. So I have to bring myself back into my body. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to discern the energies. Is this mine? Is this not? So after I set the intention, then I can start asking questions. Is this mine? Is this not? Is this pattern of wanting to always be in control, which is a big one for me, does this come from me? Or have I inherited this? Is this a trauma from a past life? I just start to ask a question. And often where it really started with me is a feeling, like a feeling of expansion or a heart opening or a yes feeling or sound. So I'd get an opening and then I'd be like, okay, yes, this came from my people. Okay, then is this from grandpa? I'd get a contraction. No. The contraction is like a sinking in feeling, a heaviness, a sliminess, an actual feeling of your body caving in, whatever the contraction, the yes and the no. So it's like you could talk, say it's, what is that, muscle testing? You know how you can muscle test. I sway, my body will sway, yes or no. That's where some of that came from for me. But the expansion feeling is like the knowing, yes, okay, I'm on the right path. Now, what's the next layer I want to go to? And once you start doing this, then you'll start to have a rhythm that it just starts to flow. And then the answers come right in as a knowing. So it just takes some time to adopt. But I love that the body helps communicate it a lot. There's feelings, there's sensations that arise. I work with a client who her intuitive language is physical sensations. Like that's what she gets. So we'll be tracking and she'll be like, oh, my shoulder hurts. Okay. I go into the energy of the shoulder. I imagine myself going into it. I go under it to see what's really there. And then the knowing start coming in, the data sets, the information. How, and then she'll be able to say, oh, okay, so now this hurts. Or, oh, I feel warm now. Or I see blue. Or, oh, now my father's coming forward. Like my father's coming into my head. Or I'm starting to feel very sad. And you just go layer under layer and you can just keep on going deeper and deeper. And that gets you places.
Wow. Okay. So just to make sure I fully understand what you're saying. So when it comes to getting a sign or kind of figuring out, is this my stuff or is it coming from somewhere in my lineage? It
Mm,
boils down to connecting with ourselves on an intuitive level. First,
correct.
asking ourselves, is this mine? Is this coming from somewhere else? And
Hmm.
then asking a question after that. Okay, if it isn't mine and it's coming from somewhere else, who is it coming from? Is it grandpa? Is it uncle? Is it
Yeah.
so and so forth? And you keep like digging deeper and deeper until you get the questions. And I also think I feel like I've had a lot of these conversations as well
Yeah.
to also be able to pick up things that are not mine without necessarily just by analyzing my
Yes.
surroundings, right? For
Yes.
example, if I have people in my life, uncles or aunts or parents who struggle with managing money, for
Hmm.
example, I can easily see that, oh, okay, there's some sort of like family pattern here that
Yes.
I know a couple of people struggle with X, Y, and Z. I also struggle with this thing. This
Hmm.
is some sort of either learned behavior or passed down trauma that we are
Correct.
all experiencing at the same time. So sometimes that is very obvious, but there's some things that are intangible. For
Yes.
example, like being chronically depressed. And I listened to a
Ah.
podcast that completely changed my perspective immensely. And I think this kind of
Hmm.
goes into this multidimensional energetic healing that you were talking about, where this guy, he was basically chronically depressed his whole life, right? Yes, he grew up very poor and in harsh conditions, but at some
Hmm.
point he started to do well for himself. He became a professor, he was making good money, but he still struggled with depression. Like he could not get rid of it. And then he decided to take ayahuasca.
Mm.
And he discovered that the depression he was harboring was actually the depression of his ancestors who were enslaved.
Mm.
And that deep trauma and depression that they had, he was carrying that with him. So it wasn't
Yes.
necessarily anything that was happening in his present life, but he was
Yes.
feeling the sorrow of his bloodline.
Yep. I've seen that, especially on the indigenous side. They like never feeling home, always being uprooted, always on guard, like your land being taken away. So that sort of thing. There is a, I had to work that. I had to work all of that out. And even having to move because you have to move away from your lands. So the ones that made the choice to leave and the ones that were taken, that part, all of that absolutely still impacts us. One other thing I wanted to share. So, yes, consciously we can do this. Like, I know in my heart, this behavior, this control piece that I have does not come from me. Yeah, I have some past life trauma where, yes, like I can see where I grip on control, but I know I inherited it. So I know that the money thing, right? I know I inherited certain stuff around money. And I tracked that recently back to a grandpa and his father, where it came from. And I knew it just on my, just like my regular level, that there was something that was outside of me, that wasn't just mine. And I was able to then start to look back. And I literally like just started having conversations with family members. Hey, mom, where is this? Did your father have stuff going on? Yes. And then this. And I can track it in that way too, to then get to the behavior and then I can clear the energy of it. The other tool, the other way that really the spirit world communicates is through dream time. And setting an intention during dream time before you go to bed, show me what I need to know around this behavior I have that's not, I know it's not mine, this depression. Show me. You can get a lot in dream time. And it may not be that the visual you get in dream time is the actual visual of what happened to your ancestors, but there's feeling that you come out with, a feeling of sadness, a feeling of longing, a feeling of whatever. That feeling takes you into how it was carried through the lineage, how it was passed down often. So in dream time, you can get answers. You can also ask your spirit team to help you in dream time to not only bring awareness, but to help clear out some of the energy. We don't always consciously have to know what's happening to us. But if we work on a multidimensional level, we don't know half the stuff that's happening out there, that's happening at our higher levels and getting cleaned up. So in dream time, you can bring that forward. And often you'll wake up with some clarity. Either a thought will come to you or something.
I love that you said that because it gives us the power. Like we know it's important to know that we can do some of this healing and clearing ourselves. And that's why I love having these conversations and speaking to people like you because it's, yes, someone can go to you and I encourage people who are seeking your services to reach
Mhm.
out to you. But I think it's also important to remind ourselves that we have the power to
Yes.
be intuitively guided and also requests that, okay, you might not necessarily know what ancestor is coming from, but if you're struggling with something, you can ask for whatever energetic components are involved that keep this
Yes.
cycle in your life. You can ask for that to be cleared. And I love that you gave that example about the dream state because
Hmm.
we don't have to be conscious. And sometimes when we're not fully conscious and our brains are at a certain wave length, that's even
Yeah,
more powerful for healing.
for sure.
So I want to ask too, you talked about it connecting with ancestors and really making sure that we're grounded into our body and kind of asking, okay, Grandpa Paul, I want to talk to you, just as
Hmm.
an example. I want to dig deeper into that a little bit, right?
Hmm.
Because I want to know, are there good versus bad ancestors? Because I think
Oh.
a lot of people might be curious about this and just want to jump right in and start connecting with the ancestors. But like you mentioned, sometimes you don't really know what you're connecting to, so you have to be
For sure.
very careful. So I would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to take it one step back as I guide into this. So, being now that we're in the new paradigm, we're well, still like really moving into a new paradigm. These old tools and techniques aren't necessarily needed, meaning altars and rituals. And we are, if we're still called to do those, great. Then that's what your heart is called to do, and that's what you do. These like protections, surrounding yourself in a bubble, protecting yourself, it is not needed in the same way anymore. When we are within our bodies, we are empowered. We are in our sovereign light. That's the protection. Okay. So as I say this, often the old paradigm way of doing the metaphysical thing would be surround yourself in a bubble, now start connecting with the energies. Because we were always outside of ourselves. We were living in a power over dynamic frequency as a collective. That is shifting, that is getting cleaned up. There are still dark forces out there, but they don't have the hold that they used to. So when I say that, we are moving into no right, wrong, good, bad kind of energy now. We're not in polarity like we used to be. So as we may see darkness, the fear around that, yeah, we can easily go into fear and want to seek someone outside of ourselves to help. But if we actually really go into the energy behind, let's say, a relative that more connects with the dark or is holding dark, that piece is within our, if we go within ourselves, we realize that nothing can penetrate, nothing can get us. We can hold that light for ourselves. When we start, so when I, a lot of the ancestor work I've done, I've seen a lot of like ancestors cast spells, do bad things, like lots of secrets start to come out when you do the ancestor work. And you can see how, excuse me, how that has impacted the lineages for sure. You can see angry ancestors. You can see scary ancestors. Remember, as a little kid, you may have been scared of a tall uncle or something. Like you, that sort of energy can come forward. You can see the decisions they've made that have created disconnection and pain and that sort of thing. What we have to remember when we're connecting with the ancestors, we are connecting at their higher levels. We are not connecting, we want to connect at those levels, not this 3D reality level that we knew them as, or we heard stories about them as. This guy was a scary guy and did all these things. We are connecting with that ancestor at their higher levels because as they transition, they really want to be of the light. They want to clean up any baggage that they're holding on to because they're on their path and their soul's journey to come back or to be done with incarnating and to be on their full soul, let's say, expression. So when we go in knowing to not be scared, and I'm saying that, but yeah, there may be times when we feel uncomfortable. There may be times that energy comes up. There may be times when we feel like we're being attacked or something like that. Remember, if we go in, we can surround ourselves in light if we need to. We can use the light to dissipate the dark energy. You can just call the light of all that is in. You can call in like flames to help dissolve energies. We have the power here. We are in control. This power over dynamic is not in control anymore. As much as it feels like it is. And there's still dark forces, there's still stuff happening. We know, we live in this world, right? But this ancestral piece is very different. When we go into it, we're coming from a neutral state. We're coming from a state of just, this is an isness. And so what I'm seeing an ancestor who may have done something to cause real harm, and that has caused harm to other people in even especially in the lineage, and you can see the discord in the lineage. I'm holding love and space for that ancestor. I see them in their light. There's no right, wrong, good, or bad here. We're just cleaning up the energy behind that harm that was caused.
Okay. So it's not a matter of good or bad or being
Mm-hmm,
afraid. It's a matter of first and foremost setting your intention of who you want to
mm-hmm,
connect with, coming from a place of neutrality and
mm-hmm,
understanding that you're still a sovereign being and you can't be hurt. And I
mm-hmm.
think it's also important to have guidance as well. You're someone who does this work very
Yeah.
often. So I think I'm a big proponent of people going to practitioners to
Mm-hmm.
help practice and get insight on really how to go about setting intention, protecting yourself if that's what you want to do, how
Yeah.
to call in the right people or pick up on the right energy, because obviously we know that on the other side, or I've come to know that there are
Mm-hmm.
different types of beings and they're
Correct.
trickster beings that can
Correct.
disguise themselves as something that they're really not. And being able to feel on an intuitive level, am I connecting with the right ancestor or with the right being?
Yeah.
And again, okay, so we've been talking about obviously ancestral healing and why it's important to not just look at the person you're trying to heal with or reconcile with, right? If it's your dad, if it's your grandmother, someone that like you knew while they were
Yeah.
alive or they're still alive, but also looking at the lineage and seeing where it comes from to clear that pattern or energetic imprint. So is
Mm-hmm.
that also clearing karma? Does that kind of get into this work about karma?
Yeah, so karma is a very interesting thing. I have a different kind of perspective of karma now. I think through a lot of the work that I've been doing, and I keep on talking about this like new paradigm versus old paradigm. Karma was really locked into a cycle and a system or a philosophy that was connected to the power over dynamic. At one point, there was a more of a purity to it. And So if we're talking about this power over dynamic, these were dark forces that came into our galaxy, came into our planet, and started hijacking humanity. And also other planets too, right? And they came in, and this power over this heavy power over dynamic was through Orion. So they called it like the Orion Wars. They came, and this energy where these dark forces, you can call them Dracos, reptilian beings, you Anunnaki, like there's multiple beings that were connected to this that came down and started taking over the, let's say, humanity. And we went from being truly connected to nature, right, to being truly connected to our sovereignness as an interconnected collective, to separation, war, and all the things that humanity has experienced over many generations that we're all still holding. And that power over dynamic on that very high multidimensional level that has trickled down to controlling humanity, like power over us, is shifting, where we are liberating and coming into our own sovereignty first. And so, as you see, with so many people waking up, they're coming into this understanding of, I have to follow my truth. And it's nothing outside of them, but it's inside. We're in an inside process now, discovering our empowerment, our sovereignty, and how to express our truth and our gifts out in the world. That's the path we are on now. We are not looking outside of ourselves like we used to. We are not connecting with this structure that was really heavily influencing us into, you have to do X, Y, and Z to get to X, Y, and Z. Our ancestors are breaking that pattern too. We're breaking that within ourselves. We should be doing this, supposed to be doing this. These structures are dismantling. And so, because of this, because of what these power over dynamics and this shifting, karma was connected to a loop and a cycle to keep humanity locked down, just like we can say certain religions, right? You do this, and that kind of keeps humanity locked in a place. There are many people who are still like sovereign, that are coming into their sovereignty, that still love a religious structure, and that's beautiful. But it's coming, the power, empowerment is coming from within. So, this karma piece, if you look at it energetically, it really keeps if I do this, oh my gosh, this is going to happen to me. As we move into the new paradigm, if we do this, we are growing in this way and in this way and in this way, and we're expanding in this way, and we're learning from that versus now eye for an eye, or whatever the going around and coming around is. I just don't see that. I don't feel that. I don't live in that energy. I live in an energy of, I'm cleaning up what's not mine. I'm supporting others and cleaning up their piece so they can be in their full expression. Now, yes, some of our ancestors are still holding those patterns in place, for sure. I see that every day. I see it even with my own people. Guilt and shame, I feel, are not meant for the new paradigm. I feel that guilt and shame has been one of the things that has really held humanity back. And yes, maybe there are some beautiful ways to hold shame, and that you can grow and blossom from it. But the guilt programming has been so intense for people that I've watched fathers not express love to their children because of the guilt they hold, because of the structure they've been under around a masculine has to show up in this way, or they should be doing this and they should be doing this, and they disconnect. I've seen mothers do that. I've seen myself do that, withhold love. So that's why I have a different image of it, because I think that karmic cycle can lock us in guilt. I do.
I'm so happy that you said everything that you said because I'm coming to that awareness, a similar awareness as well. And as you were talking, when you said that we're moving away from this paradigm of if you do this, you get to this, and it's more
Hmm.
about just like growing and evolving. Something popped into my head, which was we're clearing and we're healing and we're looking at energetic patterns so we can shift closer and closer to heaven on earth.
Oh,
And
yes.
I that was just like what came to me because for me, let me speak for myself, right? When I start started like becoming more and more of a spiritual seeker, looking at different spiritual and religious
Yeah.
traditions, karma
Hmm.
is one of the first things that popped up for me, like how that works, past
Yeah.
lives and cycles. But I always struggled with this having to come back to learn a lesson, having to come back to learn a lesson, because I
Hmm.
was like, and this was my rational brain. I was like, okay, cool. Let's just say that's a thing, right? You want to clear up karma from this life, you want to clear up karma from your current life. Love that. But I keep forgetting what I'm clearing in the next life, right? Because karma is tied to reincarnation. So I'm like, if I keep forgetting that I'm not supposed to take it when someone punches me in the face, right? I'm not supposed to just not stand up for myself, right? Because karma isn't always about you do something bad, so something bad is going to happen to you. It's much more intricate
Hmm.
than that. I'm like, if
Hmm.
I keep forgetting these lessons that I'm learning,
Yeah.
then how do I get out of the 25,000 year cycle? So that was, I never fully understood that. And I can't sit
Hmm.
here and say with 100% certainty that's not true. It
Yeah.
just does not resonate with me as much. And I've been getting more and more into readings and podcasts and discussions centered around, is this reincarnation thing again another distortion of a
Hmm.
message to keep us in a cycle and
Yeah.
keep us on this wheel that makes us afraid or ashamed when we do certain things because we're putting things in a good or bad scale. Granted, obviously there is a spectrum. I know
Yes.
that sometimes it's good to look at things from a neutral perspective, but there are things that are very dark, right? But
Correct.
I just want to put that disclaimer out there. So everything that you're saying, I totally resonate with, right? Because again, I'm not necessarily saying that I don't think karma is a thing, but maybe it's not a thing in the way we think about it.
Yes. And also, we also have to remember at some level of awareness, we made a choice, right? I made a choice in another lifetime to murder someone. I know I was a perpetrator, I've been a victim, I've been it all, right? I've been a savior, I've been it all in lifetimes. So if I know on some level I made a choice to cause harm, or I made a choice to reincarnate, or I made a choice to do this, right? The victim also made a choice. The victim on some level said yes, on a soul level said yes, whether they're aware of it or not, said yes. I said yes on a soul level to have what harm was caused to me done in this lifetime and others. And so when you start to liberate people, especially from their lives, the different lives they've had, or liberate even within this lifetime, you start to see like they'll hold the guilt and shame from a lifetime that they did where they caused all this harm and they're still somehow carrying it in this lifetime. But if they realize though the ones that were the victims said yes because they're on their soul's journey, they wanted to have that experience as well. It's hard to say I made a choice to be assaulted as a kid. I made a choice to get cancer or whatever. But if we really look at it on a soul level, we made these choices to have these experiences, to come into the lifetime, to choose the parents we chose and whatever, choose the family, choose the lifetime we had that we were in poverty, we were enslaved, we were whatever. I know these are really hard things to say and talk about, but on some level, there was an experience that we needed to have that came through. And it's traumatizing to even experience and think about at times. But this is how I see it when I'm really vastly out there looking and clearing energy for people.
It's interesting that you say that, right? Because I've heard people say that quite often on the show. We choose our parents, we choose our experiences, no matter how hard and
Yeah.
disgusting and traumatizing they are. And I struggle with that a little bit because, and anybody, most people would, because like, why would I choose to
Yes.
be abused, mishandled?
Yeah.
You name it. But given what you said about karma, because the argument when I asked that question is people do that so that they can clear out karma or learn certain lessons. So it's like a means to an end on the
Mm-hmm.
karma ideology that we were just talking about. So given what we just talked about in regards to karma and maybe we're distorting it a bit, what is your
Mm-hmm.
perspective or do you have one as to why a soul would choose that? Because a part of me sometimes is, are we choosing these things or be if we go down the rabbit hole of, okay, maybe we're under a system that is trying to generate as much pain as possible, right?
Oh,
If there are these like quote unquote beings that are of the dark that
Hmm.
want to keep humanity imprisoned, right?
Hmm.
So if they've created a model where they want to extract as much pain as
Hmm.
possible, then are we choosing these things or are we incarnating into a system that generates the pain that we're all suffering from? That was a
Yeah.
lot there, but I would love to hear your perspective.
Wow. Wow. I
I
just
hope I didn't confuse
love,
you there.
no, not at all. I just love this conversation. I think it's a both and. I think it is really a both and because I have seen it when I've cleared people. I've seen both. I've literally watched souls be pushed off in their beautiful light. Let's call it like I've watched, okay, I've seen a couple of people where I was working with them. They were in angelic form up there having their whatever. If we just loosely call it this way, right? Let's just put it into form, just make it easier to, and then getting pushed into an incarnation. They didn't have the choice. They were pushed into it and they were left, they were forced into it, into an incarnation, and then they incarnate lifetime after lifetime into different things. But their original, let's say, going into a form kind of incarnation was in trauma, like in, and then they had to figure it out as they went along. So, in that energy, did they on a soul level say yes? If we track it even further back, I usually see the choice. I usually see it somewhere in their souls, their beingness, they said yes. Okay. To have an experience. They didn't know what it was going to look like. Like, we don't know what tomorrow's going to look like, but we set an intention. So I have seen forcing. I've seen definitely within a framework, we continue cycles for sure. And I've seen it in the vastness of their soul's journey. I've seen choice. Okay. Definitely within like the framework we've lived in humanity for the last thousands of years under the power over dynamics, definitely there's been like the cycling of experiences that continue because we frequency matches frequency, right? So we reincarnate into choosing these parents because they match whatever frequency we were experiencing and still want to experience, right? I knew I had to figure out how to be safe within myself. So I chose lifetime after lifetime these experiences of not feeling safe. They all look different, but I kept on choosing this cycling this of these unsafe. But within this lifetime, somehow I started waking up. I started remembering. And I know I chose that on a higher level. I know this is beyond my intellect that has chosen this. So I hope that answers your
It
question. That's a
does.
both and.
Yeah, it's a both. And there isn't like a straightforward, this is
Mhm.
why my soul would choose to come and do this. And I think it is fascinating that you said some people are like forced into an incarnation. And when I hear things like that, it just, again, it's like that world, the spirit world, right, is so much of a mirror to this world. And it's not all love and light. There's like a lot of gray area, right?
Yeah.
And this idea of choice, right? Because that brings up this idea of do we all really have free will? But that's just going to
Oh,
get us
oof.
off track, which I think yes and no.
Yes.
Yes, it's I think it's both. I definitely think it's both. And again, it's just very fascinating, right? Because going back to this idea of, okay, some people say that we're on a prison planet, we're on a planet where these dark forces are trying to take control, which is very synonymous to a lot of, what I've heard in Christian rhetoric. I don't know if
Mm,
this is necessarily in the Bible,
mm,
but like the fact that the
mm.
devil has dominion over the earth, right? So there's been a lot of this talk about like dark entities holding humanity hostage. How do you resonate with that rhetoric? Do you think it's healthy to speak that way? Does it make you feel powerless? Or
Mm.
how should people like think about that?
Yeah. So in my work, I absolutely work with dark forces. Often I'm clearing them out of people. And there's no fear because they are a being as well, just like us. And the way I work with them now is that I'm realizing the bigger picture of it all is that they don't have the power that they used to have. Yes, at one time, they really did have more of a lockdown. But I see such profound shifting and growing into empowerment within ourselves, the sovereignty piece that they just don't have the hold like they used to. So I don't see the prison planet like I used to see it. I know we've had that. The tragedy, the awfulness, that the oppression, that humanity has experienced over time is beyond just humans doing it to each other, I believe. But but the shifting I'm seeing, and I know for a lot of people, they think that times are very dark right now because it's just a mess, right? There's wars, there's all this stuff going on politically, whatever, like all this stuff. To me, the way I see it is I'm seeing these are like the growing pains of the new way of being, the new way we're coming into. I see love, I see light, I see unification, I see beauty. That's where I see is going because I keep on going into my sovereignty. I'm not tuning into the external world like I used to. And the more I do that and I go within, the more I see the beauty and I'm not connected to the dark. I definitely still clean it out. I clean it out myself. I clean it out in others, but they just don't have the stronghold. They're so easy to clear out. You don't have to annihilate them anymore. Like you used to have to annihilate them. You used to bargain with them. You used to have to get like really strong forces involved to get rid of them. You don't anymore. When you start to catch them and you see what they have done, they're like, oh, we lost. And they either go into the light or they just dissolve. That's how I see them often. So that's how I see things. I just don't see them in the darkness, what you're saying with particular viewpoints.
Yeah, and I also think that if you believe that things have power over you, then
Yes.
they will have power over you. I do think that we can transcend this idea of being on a prison planet. We don't have to give into that frequency because we do have conversations about what it means to have heaven on earth, right? We
Yes.
talk about Christ consciousness. So we know that
Yes.
all of these things are just frequency fields. And I think how I perceive it is that we have been brainwashed into a particular frequency
Yeah.
and we can decide to buy out of that frequency or that
Hmm.
program at any time, but we're not necessarily enslaved. I think a lot of people are asleep and therefore they are aligned to a frequency because they're not conscious of what's
Yep.
happening. And that's how we continue to have these conversations to start to get people to think. And I think the more we think, the more we ask questions, the more we're curious, the more we start to break out of the unawareness of what's going on, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Oh my gosh. I'm like exactly right on par with everything you just said.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the multidimensional ancestral
Hmm.
healing, right? Because at the
Hmm.
beginning, you said that we have our bloodline ancestors while we're in this particular meat suit in this lifetime, but you could all go back and
Hmm.
see other lifetimes and other ancestral lineages. So
Yes.
when you work with clients,
Yes.
how do you know whether or not to tap into their current bloodline or to go back into like their multidimensional or go into, I should say, their multidimensional ancestral lineage?
So often a client will come in with a particular thing they want to work on. And as we're setting the intention to connect with that, then things start to present. And it may start with, let's say, a father thing, and then I can start to track it through. But often what starts to pop up is I may see the bloodline lineage part of it, but then like their life stream starts to pop up. And the life stream I just am having floaty hands because this is just how it feels for me. Like the live stream, and I don't see live stream as a linear anymore. I used to. I see it as circular. Like I just see it as spiral of, and the live stream is their lifetimes, like the gathering of all their lifetimes. And I'll start to see their live stream start to present, and then lifetimes will start to pop up. And I'll be like, whoa, you were this this is a lifetime where you were off planet and you were on a galactic council and you were making a decision about this and your planet got destroyed and
Stacey,
this yeah, oh
sorry, I don't
sorry.
mean to cut you off. I just have
Sorry.
to interject really quickly. I'm curious
Yeah.
to know, how do you see these?
Oh,
Are they images in your mind?
yeah, mind's eye. Yes. Thank you. Interrupt anytime. Yeah, because I'll just keep on going off.
Continue, please.
Yes, I'll see them often in my mind's eye. Sometimes I will see figures that come forward. When I see beings or I see figures, they're holographic. So there's some form to them, but they tend to be translucent. Like today, I was just getting some body work done, and the person who was doing body work on me, their father showed up and was standing in the corner, and I couldn't stop. looking at that. I couldn't stop connecting. And so I'm like, okay, I just have to tell you this, but your father's here and this is what he's telling you. And often I can shut it down, but I could not. And there was some reason. And, and the reason why he was showing me form, just a big figure, was because there was something in him that was the body worker that had to get awoken in him. It was crazy profound. I was bawling my eyes out because the father wanted to be forgiven. And so he forgave him on the spot while I'm literally getting body work done. And the father was able to release the guilt that he was carrying because the father felt like he ruined the mother son relationship that was developing. So the father was carrying a lot of guilt. We cleaned all that up. And then all of a sudden, this beautiful light, this was a soul piece of the body worker, came back into him. And it was the divine masculine compassion piece that was being remembered and reinvited into him. So he could start to express this divine masculine compassion that is desperately needed in the world. I was bawling my eyes out because watching the form, watching this ball of light come in, that ball of light was in my mind's eye. The form felt real. Even though, again, I was in body work. So it was like, felt the form, looked at the form, and then went back. And this piece came back into him. And it was like, he became like a whole new look, like his whole beingness shifted. And to witness what the feeling, and this was like an emotional feeling I felt, to see what the divine masculine, like how the divine masculine can express compassion, was one of the most beautiful gifts I've ever seen. And I can't wait to see this man express this. When I'm tracking energy, and let's say the life stream, in my mind's eye, there's two things that are happening. In my mind's eye, I'm seeing the like spiraling, and I'm also sensing and feeling flow of energy happening. And I may see beings or humans, figures that start to present. So it depends. Sometimes it's a smell, rarely. Sometimes it's a sound, rare, but often it's mind's eye.
Again, just to make sure I fully understand. So when you're working with clients, it's not like you necessarily know that you're going to tap into their multidimensional ancestral
Mm-hmm.
lineage. It just comes to you
Comes.
because if they come in to heal something specific, then you are focused on that specific thing that they have to heal in whatever lineage, whether it's in this current dimension or if it's a multi-dimensional lineage, then that is what kind of pops into your head and comes forward.
Correct.
Do you have any stories you could share where you were
Yeah.
working with a client and they had some sort of multi-dimensional or extraterrestrial
Yeah.
lifetime that they had to heal from? Mm.
Many different experiences that have happened. I was working with a guy who has spent a lot of time out in the woods, and he has seen Sasquatch. He has seen Sasquatch beings. And he didn't necessarily know the spiritual side of anything. This is just, oh, I see Bigfoot kind of energy. But he didn't know the spiritual side of it. He asked me to start tracking through. And so I was tracking his lineage. And I got to his father, and there was some cleaning up that happened with the father. And all of a sudden, a whole family of Sasquatch beings came in. And I saw them translucent. So more mind's eye, but also more physical, but translucent. And there were a couple of girls, littler girls, mom and dad. And I told him, the reason why you see these Sasquatch, like physical hairy being walking around in the woods, is because that's your lineage. That's a part of who you are. That is your people. And he was like, wow, I know they're part. There was something within him that opened up, and he said, I know that. I know I've been. And the Sasquatch are guardians of the planet too. We've been gifted being the guardians of the planet. Sasquatch are part of the original DNA of the planet. They are some of the original titans that oversaw and created the planet. So when we were tracking through, I had to go through his Sasquatch family because there was a part of him that was in not feeling like belonging. Like he just never felt like belonged in school, belonged with his family, belonged. There was a deep yearning to belong. And we were able to clear out that wound from that Sasquatch level of who he was or who he is. And it shifted so much that now he like expresses himself more in this different side of him that mainstream may not really appreciate. So,
That's so cool. Wow. And Sasquatch is similar to Bigfoot. Sasquatch and Bigfoot are the same
yeah, you could say same
being.
kind
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
same energy.
That's really
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
This might be a interesting question for you, but it just popped into my head. Have you worked with someone where they were having issues in their current life due
Mhm.
to something that was happening in a parallel life?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Timeline splitting has been
Oh my
crazy
gosh.
lately. Yes. So I had this one client who, oh my gosh, this was so crazy. I don't belong in this family. Not the same kind of belonging energy that this guy had, but just, you know how we were talking about before, like, why would I choose this family? Like, why would I choose this suffering or whatever? Just not really understanding, like, I feel like I was ripped out of a family and put in a different family. That's how I felt my whole life. When we started tracking through the lineage and let's say her lineage, not, and her soul development, what we found is she has split energy in her where she was taken from a lifetime. So she was in a timeline. She was literally taken by dark being in one timeline and then plopped into this family in this other timeline in this life. So like her current family, she was plopped into, like not feeling like she had control or choice over it. Again, when I track way back in her soul's journey, I can see she wanted to have that experience in some way, right? But on all levels of awareness that we were getting to, she didn't choose this. She was literally taken out of one timeline and put into another timeline. What was that? The most recent Doctor Strange movie had the different timelines, right? We see that in movies. Hollywood is great at actually showing. They're expressing what a lot of what happens. Star Wars, all those things. Empire is what we connect with the dark forces and the kind of takeover, right? So this energy of really this timeline splitting and stuff, we had, and this was crazy because that was the first time I've ever experienced this. And I was like, is this real? Am I like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, am I really seeing a Sasquatch? Is this really happening? But I just keep on going with it because I know it's intuition and the profound shifts people have, they're happening. So once we cleared up the split, she then realized, wow, this is who I really am. But she inherited a lot of stuff from the family that she was plopped into, but then she rediscovered this whole other lineage of hers from this other timeline. Yeah.
Oh my God. Either this is, you have an insane imagination, or this, like your imagination must be out of this world because I just don't see how you could just make that up.
No,
And
I am not crazy.
if you are making it up, you should write books because that is a fascinating story. Part of the reason why I even can believe, I'm very open-minded to most
Yeah.
things, obviously, given the platform that I have, but I've
Yes.
had people on the show talk about souls coming in
Hmm.
and souls leaving a body. Like someone's
Yes.
born and they have a particular soul, and then at some point they might decide, okay, I don't want to be here anymore. And another soul comes in and takes over
Yes.
their body
Yep.
and continues living their life, but they're not technically the same soul, right? So
Hmm.
I just feel like anything is possible. I've also had someone on the show who lived her life up until she was 23 years old and then woke up again at 10 years old. And
Mm.
she could tell she was in a different timeline. It was
Hmm.
her family and everything, but food tasted differently. The colors were slightly different. The atmosphere felt slightly different. So I've heard of stories about a soul being put into a new body, a body that's already growing and it's not like a brand new baby. And I've heard of
Yeah.
people waking up in new timelines. So I do believe what you're talking about is
Hmm.
possible. Freaking fascinating. I have so many more questions, but we could be here for 10 more hours and
Oh,
I
maybe we
don't want
could.
to do that.
Oh,
Just
wow.
one more question to ask you before we start to like wind down. And I think this
Yeah.
is important, right? Because we're talking about ancestors, and something that you talk about a lot is that how death rites could also help
Yes.
in energetic healing. And I would just love to hear about that.
Woo. Can I just say a real short story about the walk-in thing?
Yes,
So
please.
one of my daughters had a switch. I think she was like 12, and she was like this one way of being, right? And then it was just like just dramatic switch.
Oh my God.
And I went down that rabbit hole of going into, is she a walk-in? Because and like walk-ins usually don't have memories be after
Yes.
before they've walked in, so she still hold the memories. But I was down that rabbit hole for a while trying to track, and I found she had a glitch in her. So she jumped into around 12 years old.
Mhm.
She was being bullied. She got scared. She literally energetically put herself in a glitch, like in a glitch in the universe. There's like this, she opened up like a portal,
Mhm.
stuck herself in there and locked herself in. But then, because she was a 180, she like
Mhm.
totally switched. And it took a couple years for me to find it. But I did feel like she was in a walk in for a while. But anyways, yeah,
Oh
and I
wait,
cleared
so
out the
wait,
glitch.
okay, so she put her original soul in like a glitch in some sort of container.
Yeah.
Another soul came, took over for some
No,
time.
no, I thought okay, so a walk-in is when a soul leaves the body and walks into the that body.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I thought that's what
It-
happened.
okay. Oh, you
But
thought it was what
and
was
I
that?
was tracking the energy and I couldn't, because she had the memories and because there were other things that made me think, no, she's still her. But she like literally took a big soul piece of herself and pushed it out of her, put it like in a portal and locked it down.
So she was fragmented a bit.
She was fragmented.
Interesting.
Yeah. So soul retrieval is fragmentation. We fragment
Mhm.
ourselves. That happens. We still do this.
Yes,
Watch
of
people do
course.
that. And we reclaim. But this particular piece, so her depression piece, it was like, what is this 180?
Hmm.
Because I couldn't track it through the lineage. I couldn't track it any other way. And I'm like, is this a walk-in? Because it was such a 180. And it wasn't. It happened to not be for her. I was able to find the glitch and she was able to, I worked with her to reclaim it back into her. And now she's like, her happy, jolly, good lucky, good luck self. Like, but she's still working through a little bit of stuff. But it was like, whoa. So the walk-in piece I literally thought was happening.
But it was just like a fragmentation, and now you were able to reintegrate all
Hmm.
parts of her soul back to her so that she could have like her full
Yeah.
personality. That is so fascinating.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need
So
an
the things,
episode dedicated to some of these
sorry.
other rabbit holes that we could get into. No, don't say sorry. I
Oh my
love
gosh.
this. I love this so much. Okay,
Yeah.
back to the to
Death
burial
rights.
rites. Yes,
Yeah,
death
death
rites.
rights. So this is really truly connected to the ancestor piece. So with the death rights, we know that when a soul passes or leaves the body, they don't always go to what their next destination is. The person I just listened to that you just launched on your podcast is was talking about ghosts and how they'll hang around. A lot of times there's unfinished business. There are things that need to be cleaned up. The death rites is that process of cleaning up whatever that soul is holding on to so they can go on to if they want to incarnate again, if they're choosing that, or maybe they don't even say choose anymore, if that's the next step in their soul iteration, or if it's something else. But what the death rites does is it's through a surrogate, so it's usually through a loved one that holds the space to call in that loved one that passed, and we clear up the energy. But the interesting thing about the death rights piece is that often what's getting cleared up is the stuff in the ancestry. And it's so the person may be holding some guilt of things that they did to their, let's say it's a father and they did things to their children, like yelled at them or whatever. You're cleaning up some of that stuff, but you're also cleaning up anything that soul needs to release in order to move on. So it could be something from the grandfather or the father, let's go back to scarcity, that is still holding in the lineage and it's got to get cleared out of that loved one so then it could get cleared out of the younger generations. In that way, that soul can leave. So there's a lot going on in a death rites that is beyond just clearing the person that it has passed.
So it does it include certain rituals or prayers? Do you just say it like a blanket statement as depending on what your culture is to make sure that the death rites for your culture are carried out? I'm just trying to understand
Yeah, yeah.
how does someone do this ritual to make sure that they're clearing out whatever
Hmm.
needs to be cleared out?
Yeah. I think death rites really needs to be done from a practitioner in whatever belief system you may have. right? So if it's like a priest or a minister, or if it's whatever tradition, if there's a traditional piece there, but you can also do it with an energetic practitioner, and you go beyond, let's say, the tradition or cultural pieces, because an energetic practitioner can clear out any traditional or cultural pieces that need to go. So, an energetic person, that could be a shamanic focused person. It could be more of a death doula if they're trained in a particular way to clear out energy. We know shamans are known to clear out energy. Certain indigenous practice and their death rites, they're clearing the energetic holds or threads or blocks that are ready to be released. The way I do it is I'm working through a system of unwinding the energy centers within people. And as you say, I didn't say chakras because, again, chakras are connected to a power over dynamic model that got hijacked. They originally were in aligned energy, and they got hijacked. And so I work within energy centers, and I don't put a program or a cultural program around what a chakra is. Okay. So I use it as the energy center within our body, and not the beliefs or programming behind it. And you're unwinding each energy center, and it starts to pull up things that are ready to be released. So it's a process of tracking energy. It is a ritual process. Often there's like what is it called? The thing, a shaker thing. I can't think of the name of what that makes a noise that like you shake. You can, like, there is some ritualistic process of unwinding energy centers, of sound, whether it's drumming or something that's more shamanic to help pull up the energy that's ready to be released. But then I'm also doing it within the same way I do one-on-ones and connecting with people, where I'm tracking the energy of the lineages, I'm tracking the energy of the life streams, I'm seeing where the blocks are, if there's entities that are holding on that are ready to be released, I'm talking it through with them. So the them is the person who wanted to do the death rites, the one that's alive, that wants to do the death rites for the loved one. They're holding the space. I'm working through them, and we're then clearing the one that's passed.
Okay.
But often we're clearing that person who's the surrogate too.
That makes a lot of
Often.
sense. If you're doing energy work, I have to ask because you just sparked my curiosity. In what ways has this whole like Reiki system, chakra system been hijacked or misunderstood or distorted?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about those power over dynamics, we're talking about structures, right? And however the dark forces like hijacked it, they created philosophies and structures that it has to be done in this way. It looks this way, it's this way, and it's got to be done this way. And there's particular energies. If you feel or sense the chakra overlay, you can feel some blockage. You feel like I feel resistance, like I feel like locked down. I feel like there's not freedom. There's not that expansion that we talked about, how a lot of people feel their intuitive voice saying yes. And if you remove, let's say, the overlay of the teaching, and you go back to the original source of the energy center, now it feels expansive. This is that
Okay.
sovereignty piece. Now I know people who are like, love the chakra model. It works for them. It's empowering for them. Wonderful, great. I see it as this overlay that's been hijacked, and there's form and there's structure within it that shows if you don't do this will happen. If you don't do this, you have to do this. You have to, that there's not a freedom and an expansion in it.
Okay. That's very interesting. I talk a lot about the chakra systems on the podcast. I haven't done too much of a deep dive on a personal level. I've had like my chakra balance. I can feel when
Mhm.
my throat chakra is blocked. I can feel when my sacral chakra is blocked or solar plexus. It like the energy is very heavy there. And I think I've become
Mhm.
more prone to feeling it or being
Yes.
aware of it. But I think what you're trying to say is that it's expansive and it's fluid and we should be able to tap into it without it being systematized.
Yes. So you're sensing the energy center of the chakra, energy center of the throat. There's just a teaching that was put on top of it, like a program that was put on top of it. It's just an energetic thing that's getting moved out of the way, and you're getting to the truth of the energy center for yourself. Not that the chakra has to be green or red or, and again, these are just really subtle energies. And that's why for some people, it's super empowering to work with them. For me, I go to a core source and I don't label it. That's just what's right for me and how I work with people. But I'm
Okay.
still working those centers. They're super empowering. I feel my throat when it blocks and I go into the energy of it. And I know it's a powerful energy center. It's just, I'm not calling it, I'm not labeling it anymore.
It's
Because for,
restrictive.
if to me, it's restrictive. Correct.
Okay, got it. Got it. That makes sense.
Correct.
Stacey, this has been a great conversation. And like I said, we could keep going. And I say this a lot on my podcast, but truly, like, I really mean it, especially with this conversation. There's so many more rabbit holes we can dive deeper into. So that means I have to have you back on the show so
Okay.
we can do
I'm
that.
happy.
I always ask this question to all of my guests, and that is, have you shifted in perspective on anything recently? And it could be as lighthearted or as deep as you'd like it to be.
Ooh, okay. There's one big thing, and this is more of a mental piece. So energetically, like I'm always constantly being shifted and challenged into new things, right? I'll work with a client, and then some random way comes forward, like that timeline splitting thing, and I'm like, whoa, okay. But recently, my husband's getting back into running, and he came in, and I said, "Oh, hey, how was your run?" And instead of him going into this whole thing about, oh, I'm so out of shape, this is awful, it's so terrible, all he said, very matter of fact to me was, I have room for growth. And I'm someone who can be I'm very hard on myself. And that I took to heart. And that has completely started shifting my perspective. And yes, I've heard this before, right? Like we've heard this in different ways, but somehow it really landed deep within me. I have room for growth. Yeah, just because I was majorly triggered yesterday and I went off on someone because I was really triggered and I was trying to hold them accountable, I realized, whoa, okay, I have room for growth here. This is where my next step is I get to go with cleaning this up and coming from a different perspective now. So that idea of our mindset and that perspective piece is just going in deeper for me right now.
Wow, that was such a powerful shift. That hit me like a wave because I really just shifted now because it's reframing this like negative self-talk and shame spiral that we can find ourselves in and reframing it. Like I have room for growth. It's a very
Hmm.
neutral statement. It's not mean. It's
Yeah.
almost loving,
Yes.
but honoring the truth of where one is without being self-deprecating. That was like fantastic. Thank you for sharing
Hmm.
that. Where can
Yeah.
people find you if they want to work with you or learn more
Absolutely.
about you?
Yeah. And I offer a free group energy clearing every month, the third Saturday of the month, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. I'm in Denver and it's online. I just welcome it to anyone, and you can learn more about that at lightbodyacademy.com. So lightbody, like our light and our body, lightbody.com. And on Instagram, you can go to at Lightbody Global Academy and check us out there. So I work with the team, and yeah, and you'll find out about the free group energy clearing every week, every month.
Amazing,
So
amazing.
thank
Stacey,
you.
this has been a fantastic conversation. Really
Thank you.
enjoyed it. I know the
Me too.
audience loved it as well. So I really appreciate you and your time.
Thank you.